Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from easyautomation.com and welcome to another video of our Getting Started with Bash in Linux Operating System video series. And in this video, we are going to talk about working with variables in Bash. So far we have been talking about a lot of different commands and understood some of the most important concept of shell scripting in Linux operating system. And this is the place where we are going to start doing a stepping stone for our shell scripting itself, which is nothing but the variables. So variable, like any other programming language, are the symbolic names to reference a chunk of memory in the code. And similarly, the variable can be a local or a global variable. So it's pretty much exactly how you do in any other programming language. Shell also has covered that, which is great. So as I said, the variable declaration is going to look something like this. All we have to do is we have to do a variable name and then assign a value with an equal symbol there. But the most important point when working with the variable declaration is that you can't give a variable name declaration with a space between the variable name as well as the variable value with an equal to over here, because that is completely wrong. You can't use a space there, because if you try to give a space, Bash will interpret this as a command rather a variable itself. So it doesn't think that it is a variable declaration and a value being assigned. Rather, it think that my name is going to be a command, equal to is a command, Karthik is a command. So basically all these has to be together. If not, Bash is going to interpret in a very different way. So that's the reason why you have to give the variable name declaration and a value assignment in this particular fashion. Well, as that said, we can also export a variable using an export command, something like this. And then you can view the exported command using the $variable name, something like that. So this is how you basically do everything over here. And I will talk about that in a minute while we get there. But yeah, this is how you can export a particular variable. But the most important thing is that while you export a variable, something like this, you will not be persisting the particular value that you have exported. Rather, you have to persist in what is called as a .bashrc or .zshrc, whatever shell scripting that you're using. You will be probably exporting the particular value into that particular RC file so that the value will be persisted. And I will talk about that because we have not touched the bash RC file yet so far, and we are going to be talking about that as well. And this is a good chance that we are going to test that particular file. And there are many different environment variable available within our shell, which is the env, which is going to help you view all those global variable, and I will show you how this particular env file is going to be very helpful for you. Well, as I said, so far in our variable declaration, you might have noticed that I have not really given any type like integer type or a string type or any number type or something like that. I mean, there is nothing so far in the shell that I have told anything about you in this particular variable declaration. But actually you can also enforce a type within the variables of the shell using what is called as a declare keyword. So declare keyword is a way that you can use your variable to set a value as well as its attribute. So you can use what is called as an -a to make the variable as an array, and if it is capital A, then you can make it as an associative array, -i for an integer attribute, and -l for the lowercase, -n for reference to the variable name by its value, and -r for the read only, -t for trace attribute, u for uppercase, and x for the name export. So you can do a lot more things, something like this, using what is called as the declare. And it's not like exactly like a type, rather it is going to be an attribute, but it is going to be helpful for you to actually define a strict type or attribute associated with an variable. So this is going to be very helpful while you actually work with an example, something like this. As you can see over here, this is for the integer declaration. All I'm going to do it is I'm going to declare a variable with an I over here, which is for the integer value. And if you try to set a value there with 20, and then if you try to echo it out, you will see the 20 is going to be printed out. But if you set the same myint with Karthik there, and if you try to print it out, it's going to be printing you 0. The reason why is because it is an integer type or attribute really. And the same thing happens for a lowercase as well. So if you set it as a lowercase, like a variable as a lowercase, and if you try to pass a capital letter there, the value that is going to be printed out is going to be all in lowercase, because that's how you have defined the attribute for that particular variable, my lowercase. And similarly, you can also create an array type where you can set the my array is equal to Karthik, Prashant, and John. And then while you try to do a for each loop, you can also print all this value, because now they're all in the array. And the most important thing to note over here is, in order to iterate through all the array, there is not something like my array dot length or like size or something like that. There is no method like that in the bash, really, like what you can use it in C# or Java. But you can actually use this square bracket and the close square bracket, and the between you have to use this @ symbol to tell you like the total length of this particular array. And then you can do an iteration. I mean, I have not touched the looping yet in this particular course, but you are going to get a flavor of it in this particular video. But you will actually notice that it is going to be way more better while you actually work with looping. I mean, I'm going to touch that later point of time, but yeah, this is how it's going to be done. So as that said, we are going to discuss all these things in a demo in this particular video. So let's see how it's going to look like. So as I told you, the variable declaration is much easier in Linux operating system. All you have to do is you have just follow some of the basic principle. And the first principle is you can give a variable name. For example, I'm just going to give a variable name as shell, and I'm going to set a value at ZSH over here. And if I hit enter over here, the shell value is being set. And now if I want to print that value, all I have to do is I have to use this $shell, and you will notice that it is going to basically do a bit of command operation for me already. You see that ZHS is not a command found over here. Do you want to install the ZHS? What does that mean? So basically, Ubuntu is trying to do an installation of ZHS for me. No, basically what is happening here is, while you try to do an $shell, it is basically going to be interpreted by the shell, thinking that the ZSH is a command, which is something you can find as a tool within the apt package manager, so that I can go ahead and install it for you. But the way that you can see this particular value is you can do an echo and then $shell, so that you can see what the value it is. So it is always better or a good practice to always do an echo of the $value, because that way it won't do these kind of misbehavior there, because that is not what we're trying to do it as well. And then you can also do the exact same thing with a shell of, let's say I'm going to do a command, and then if I try to do an echo of shell, you can see that it has just overwritten that value as CMD, because it is just going to override it for you. It doesn't matter if it is going to be already set there or not, but it's just going to set that value or override the particular value, because it doesn't worry about any of this, because there is not something that we have defined so far, right? So that's about the way that you can create a variable and set a value to it. And as I told you in the slide, you can't use a space and then you can set a value there, because you'll notice that the shell will now be interpreted by the bash as a command, and then it is going to look for all the different ways that you can find the shell, really. And it's also going to not do any of these operations, because the first operation itself has got failed, so all the rest of the operation is going to be just ignored from here. So always use this syntax, which is without the space, so that the variable can be set. And now in order to understand how we can export this particular value or this particular variable, I'm going to use the export keyword. But even before I do that, I'm just going to do one more time the echo of $shell. You can see that it is going to print me the CMD here, right? So I'm going to clear this, and let's say I'm going to do a bash here. So bash is going to open a new bash session for me. And if I do an echo right now of $shell, and if I hit enter, you see that there is no value being printed out. The reason why is because this value or the shell variable is actually sitting into that particular bash terminal. So if I try to do an exit, and if I try to do an echo of shell, you see that the command value is coming up, because this bash actually holds that particular variable's value, not the other bash. So how do I actually make this bash, the second bash, to get that particular value out? Well, the way that I can do it is by using an export command, and then I'm gonna do a shell something like this. So if I do something like this, and now if I try to do an bash, and if I do an echo $shell, you will notice that I get the command value. So this was not something working before, but now it is working here. The reason why is because we have exported the shell, but this value is still not persistent. So let's say if I kill this whole terminal session, and if I open the new terminal over here, and let's go to my profile record over here, and if I just make it bigger, and if I try to type the echo $shell, you'll still notice that my CMD value is gone. The reason why this is gone is because the value of the shell is not persistent. And the way that I can make this persistent is using a special file that is available as a part of the bash, is nothing but the bash rc. And this bash rc file is actually sitting within your hidden files of this particular directory. And you can see over here the bash rc, the .bash rc. So the dot means it is in a hidden file. If you just double click and open it, you will see that this is a detailed file which actually has got so many things over here. I mean, there are so many shopped -s of hist happened, and there are so many check win size and other stuff. I mean, what is this shopped? We'll probably talk about that later point of time. But you will see there is some case statement as well, and there is an if statements, and there are some square bracket and some operations have been happening here. You'll be wondering that when are these things are going to be discussed, but we are going to be discussing about all these things in this particular series, which is the next video really. But you can see that, yeah, there are so many things happening here with this particular bash rc file. So what if I just go and modify this bash rc file to export the value that I'm looking for? So if I do that, I can persist the value there. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a gedit. So this is one more editor that you can actually use to open the bash rc file. So I can just use the tilde symbol, which is for the home directory. And then if I hit dot of bash rc, and if I hit enter, you see that this is the same file which I just showed you, just opens up. And over here, I'm going to say export of my shell, or shell is equal to ZSH. So I'm not going to give the command, but I'm going to just give the shell as ZSH, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to close this. And now if I try to do an echo of $shell, you still see that the file is not going to, the shell is not going to print you the ZSH, because this terminal will not know what is affected in the bash rc file. And the way that you can do it, there are two ways to do it. Basically, you can close the terminal and open it so that the terminal knows, or the terminal session knows, that there is a value associated with this $shell. Or you can use something like source command, and then you can use the tilde slash dot bash rc. And if you hit enter, and now if you try doing an echo $shell, you'll see that there is going to be an ZSH file. So now that this terminal has got the up-to-date value reflecting the bash rc file. So this is the way that you can use the persistent variables value being used, which is the global declaration really. And you can export the particular value, and you can use it across all the bash sessions. So even if you close the terminal, and if you open a new terminal right now, and if you just do an echo $shell, you will see that the shell ZSH is being printed over here. The reason is because we have exported it. Cool. Now we are going to talk about the env, or the environment variable, which is available. So if you remember, we tried doing this echo of $shell before, or which of $shell before, right? You saw that we just got this /bin/bash, and this is actually coming from what is called as the env, or the environment variables. So if I do that, you will notice that we have got a lot of different environment variable, and the first among them is the shell itself. And there is a session manager, and there is a qt accessibility, color term, which is the true color, and there are so many different options available. Like there is the genome shell session mode as you've been to, and there is a shell ZSH as well. And you see that this shell.ZSH cell is equal to ZSH is basically going to be coming up from our bash RC, and this is actually sitting in the environment variable. So that's how you can get the particular value out from your terminal. So all these are actually the environment variable that you can actually use within your code or within your terminal or anywhere, and this is how you can do that. You remember in Selenium, if you wanted to use the Chrome driver, you actually set the Chrome driver path in the environment variable, and this is how you actually do that, which is cool, right? So this is how you can actually work with the environment variables in the Linux operating system. The next operation that we are going to talk about is going to be the declare type. So let's say if I wanted to do a declare of I, of -i, and then I'm gonna say phone number and hit enter. So now that this phone number is basically an attribute of integer type, and now if I try to see what type it is, I can actually use another declare of -p of the phone number, and if I hit enter, you will see that it's just going to print this particular value, declare -i of phone number. I mean, it's not very interesting, but let's say if I set a value for the phone number is equal to 20, and now if I try to do a declare -p of the phone number, you will notice that the phone number has a value of 20 there, right? Which is cool. And because it is set to integer type, now let's say if I set the phone number as, for example, Karthik, and now if I try to hit enter, and let's say if I do a declare -p of phone number, you'll notice that the phone number now will have a value of 0. Well, the reason why is because Karthik is an string type and the phone number is basically of an integer type, and now if you try to set any value which is of not integer, then the default value is set to 0 there. So that's how this is basically working. Now we have enforced a bit of these types for our actual variable there, and this the same thing we can do with a declare of L, which is for the lowercase, and now I can say that my name, or maybe just name, and then I'm going to set the name as Karthik. And now if I want to do an echo of my name is dollar of name, and if I hit enter, you'll notice that the whole capital letter has turned into small case because it is basically in the lowercase type there. And well, as that said, now you can just do a declare -p of the name, and you will see that this value has been set here as Karthik there. So even while it stores that value, it stores that in a lowercase, and that's the reason why it's printing you this particular value in the lowercase for you. So that is how this whole declare actually works. And the same thing actually works for even the array type and also for any other types. So let's say if I want to do a declare of -a for the array type, and if I wanted to set a array type, let's say my array, and then for the my array, I'm going to set all the different names, so don't give any space once again. Let's say I'm going to give Karthik, Prashant, say John, and if I hit enter, and now if I just do a declare -p of my array, and if I hit enter, you will notice that for this particular my array, for the 0th index it is Karthik, first index it is Prashant, and for 2 it is John. So now the values are all coming. And if I wanted to see the size of this particular array, then I can just do a my array of, I think there is something called as dollar open braces of hash my array of at closed braces. You'll notice that it is going to be printing me 3 there. Well, the way, as I told you, you have to actually use an echo there, not really just the value there. So if I print this, you can see that it is printing you the size of the 3 in the array. So now let's say if I want to append or maybe add a value to the array, you can actually do that as well. So like say my array of plus is equal to, and then I can just say Raja and then Hamid. If I hit enter there, you can see that the value has been set. Now if I try entering it, you can see that the array value has turned or increased into 5 because I have actually appended the array value. So this is basically an array type altogether. Now I can play around with this array pretty much like how we do for other programming languages there. But as I said, now I can also loop the array as well. I can just do a for of I in dollar, and then I'm going to open the braces, and then I'm going to say my array and the total length of the array, which is going to be the @ symbol as I told you, and then I'm going to close the braces. And because this is a for loop, I can probably do a printf, and I will tell you all these things later point of time, but for now just bear with me. We are going to talk about that in the later point of time as well. So names, and I'm going to say %yes. So if you're familiar with C programming language, you probably will know that this is how you do a printf statement in the C programming language. That's exactly how we do in the bash over here. And the /n is for the next line, and %s is for the string, and %d is for the integer type really. And I can use the $i, which is going to be for this particular I, which I'm going to be printing in, and then I'm going to do a done over here. So once I do that, you'll notice that it is going to print all the names for me, like Karthik, Prashant, John, Raja, and Hamid. So now that you have got a good understanding of how that we can work with a variable, like how we declare it and how we store the variable, how we retrieve it, how we do an export within the session, and also how we do an export like the whole environment variable in the bash RC, and how we access it using the env or the environment variable, and also how we can set a type for a variable using the declare, like declare of -i, declare of -l, and also declare of -u, -p, a, and all these values you can actually use for setting all the different variables there. You can also do a man of declare to see all the different details that you have got for the declare to learn more about it. But again, since I don't have the manual installed within my Ubuntu operating system, which I'm going to be doing that right now, you will actually notice all the details is going to coming up. But again, that is something going to help you to work with the variable quite a lot.